The council chamber stretched into infinity, or at least that's how it felt to Captain Daewon. He had been sitting in the same uncomfortable seat for 3 hours now, watching aliens debate matters that humanity had no voice in. The chamber was a massive sphere floating in space, its walls made of transparent energy that showed the stars beyond. 10,000 species filled the viewing galleries, their forms ranging from clouds of gas to crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. Daewon was 52 years old, and he had spent the last 30 years of his life attending these meetings. Every single time humanity came here with hope. Every single time they left with nothing. Observer Species 4479 has submitted another petition for full council membership, the speaker announced. The speaker was a Ven, a tall figure whose head seemed to ripple with invisible energy. The Ven were psychic masters, able to crush minds with a thought. They held 3 of the 12 most powerful seats in the council. Daewon stood up slowly. His legs ached. Getting old was something the other species didn't seem to understand. Many of them lived for thousands of years or could transfer their consciousness to new bodies. Humans just aged and died. Humanity requests the council's consideration, Daewon said. His voice was calm even though his heart was racing. We have been observers for 200 years. We have followed every rule. We have contributed to galactic knowledge. We ask only for the right to vote and speak on matters that affect all species. The chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter or might have been disgust. It was hard to tell with alien species. The petition is denied, the Ven speaker said without hesitation. Humanity remains classified as Class 7. You lack psychic abilities. Your biology is fragile. You have no hive mind coordination. You cannot manipulate energy fields. Your physical strength is pitiful compared to warrior species. The council's decision stands. Daewon sat down 47 times. This was the 47th time humanity had been rejected. He looked at the young woman sitting beside him. Young Ji was only 26, new to the diplomatic corps, and her eyes were filled with tears of frustration. Don't, Daewon whispered to her. Don't let them see you cry. Young Ji wiped her eyes quickly and nodded. The meeting continued for another hour. The Kral Dominion, 10-foot-tall warriors covered in natural armor, discussed military actions in the Outer Rim. The Sylth Collective, a hive mind of billions, reported on resource distribution. The Nephil Ascendancy, beings made of pure energy, debated philosophical matters that Daewon couldn't even understand. Finally, the session ended. Daewon stood up stiffly and led the human delegation out of the chamber. They walked through corridors that adjusted their gravity and atmosphere for each species. In the human section, everything felt normal again. Dr. Hana was waiting for them in the delegation quarters. She was 34, brilliant, and had spent years studying every species in the council. She looked excited, which was unusual. I figured it out, Hana said as soon as they entered. I know why they keep rejecting us. Because we're weak, Young-ji said bitterly. No, Hana said. Because they're afraid. Daewon sat down heavily in a chair. Afraid of us? Hana, they could destroy Earth with a thought. The Ven could crush every human mind. The Kral could invade with 1,000,000 warriors. What do they have to fear from us? Hana pulled up holographic displays. Look at this. I've been analyzing the rejection reasons for 200 years. Every time they mention our weaknesses, but listen to what they don't say. They never say we're stupid. They never say we're primitive. They never say we can't learn. They only focus on our physical and biological limitations. Because those are our limitations, Young-ji said. But think about it, Hana continued. Every species they've accepted into full membership has one great strength. The Ven have psychic power. The Kral have physical might. The Sylth have perfect coordination. The Nephil exist in multiple dimensions, but they all have one thing in common. They stopped evolving millions of years ago. They reached their peak and stayed there. Daewon leaned forward. And humans? We're still evolving, Hana said. Not biologically maybe, but technologically, socially, culturally. We change constantly. We adapt, we overcome. 200 years ago, we barely had spaceflight. Now we have ships that can cross the galaxy. We went from horses to starships in just a few centuries. No other species has done that. Before Daewon could respond, the door opened. Commander Taesung entered and his face was grim. Taesung was 45 and ran humanity's intelligence network in council space. If he looked worried, there was a good reason. We have a problem, Taesung said. A big one. He activated a secure hologram. It showed a classified council document. Daewon's blood ran cold as he read the title, Human Disposal Protocol. 3 species are sponsoring this, Tae-sung explained. The Ven Hegemony, the Kral Dominion, and the Silth Collective. They're calling for a vote to remove humans from observer status entirely. They want to quarantine Earth. No more contact with the rest of the galaxy. They can't do that, Youngji said. Can they? They can if the vote passes, Tae-sung said. And with the 3 major powers backing it, it probably will. The vote is scheduled for 30 days from now. The room fell silent. Daewon felt something building inside him. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like a decision crystallizing. For 30 years, he had been patient. He had followed the rules. He had accepted humanity's place as the weakest species. But there came a point where patience became cowardice. No, Daewon said quietly. Everyone looked at him. No more, he continued, his voice getting stronger. For 200 years, humanity has been silent. We've sat in that chamber and watched while stronger species made decisions about the galaxy. We've accepted being called weak, fragile, and insignificant. But if they're going to vote on our extinction, then we're going to be heard first. But we're not allowed to speak, Youngji said. Observer species have no voice in council sessions. Then we break the rules, Daewon said. We stand up and we speak anyway. What's the worst they can do? They're already planning to get rid of us, Hana smiled. I like this plan. Tae-sung nodded. I've been waiting for you to say something like this for years. We have 30 days, Daewon said. Hana, I need you to compile everything you've learned about why humanity is different. Tae-sung, I need intelligence on every species that might support us. Youngji, you're going to give the speech. Me? Youngji looked terrified. You're young, you're passionate, and you're angry, Daewon said. That's exactly what we need. I'm too old and too tired. You have the fire. Use it, Youngji straightened her shoulders. What do I say? The truth, Daewon said. We tell them exactly what humanity is. Not what they think we are, but what we really are. We've been the weakest species for long enough. It's time the universe learned what happens when you corner a species that has survived everything its own planet could throw at it. The team looked at each other. They all knew this was dangerous. If the speech failed, humanity would be isolated forever. But if they succeeded, everything would change. Daewon stood up and looked out at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there was Earth, home to 8 billion humans who had no idea their future was being decided in this distant place. 30 days, he said. Let's make them count. The next morning, Daewon divided his team into groups. Each group had a specific job to do, and they only had 30 days to do it. The human delegation quarters became a war room, filled with holographic displays and data streams from across the galaxy. Hana worked with a team of scientists and researchers. Their job was to understand what made humanity different from every other species in the Council. She sat surrounded by biological data, evolutionary charts, and cultural analyses. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she kept working. Look at this, Hana said to Daewon during one of his check-ins. She pulled up a comparison chart. Every successful species in the Council comes from a world where they became the apex predator early in their evolution. The Ven developed psychic powers and had no natural enemies for millions of years. The Kral grew strong and armored and dominated their planet through force. They all reached the top and stayed there. And humans? Daewon asked. Humans never stopped having enemies, Hana said. Even when we became the dominant species on Earth, we had to fight disease, weather, natural disasters, and most importantly, each other. We've been at war with ourselves for our entire history. Every human alive today is descended from survivors of countless conflicts, famines, and catastrophes. We didn't evolve in comfort. We evolved in constant struggle. Daewon thought about that. Earth's history was violent, full of wars and suffering. But maybe that violence had made humanity stronger in ways other species couldn't understand. Across the room, Bora was working on something else. She was 38 and specialized in mathematics and strategy. Her screens were filled with game theory models and predictive algorithms. I found a pattern, Bora announced. Every major species in the Council has a critical weakness tied to their greatest strength. She pulled up her analysis. The Ven's psychic power requires neural synchronization. If you disrupt that synchronization, their power fails. The Kral's strength comes from incredibly dense bones and muscles. That makes them strong, but also slow and inflexible. The Sylph's hive mind means billions of individuals thinking as one, but they have no individual initiative. If you introduce chaos, they can't adapt. The Nephil exist as energy beings in multiple dimensions, which makes them nearly invulnerable, but they can't interact with solid matter directly without special equipment. So everyone has a weakness, Daewon said. Everyone, Bora confirmed. But here's what's interesting about humanity. We don't have one great strength, so we don't have one great weakness. We have thousands of small advantages instead. We use tools, we plan, we deceive, we adapt our tactics. We're unpredictable because each human thinks differently. Another team member arrived. Kyung-soo was 51, a historian who specialized in human warfare and culture. He looked disturbed by what he had been researching. I've been analyzing human military history, Kyung-soo said, comparing it to other species. The difference is terrifying. He brought up historical battles from Earth. Other species fight for resources, territory, or survival, but humans fight for ideas, beliefs, pride, revenge. We've fought wars that lasted generations. We've developed weapons specifically designed to kill other humans. We've created entire philosophies about warfare. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, modern tactical doctrine. No other species has this. Why is that terrifying? Youngji asked. Because it means humans are the only species that evolved to fight themselves, Kyung-soo explained. The Krull fight other species. The Ven dominate other species. But humans fight humans. We've spent thousands of years getting better at killing beings exactly as smart as we are. We understand deception, ambush, psychological warfare because we use them on each other. The room went quiet. It was an uncomfortable truth, but it was truth nonetheless. Taesung was working on something different. As intelligence chief, he was reaching out to other species secretly. Not the major powers, but the smaller ones. The thousands of species that had no real voice in the council. I made contact with the Moth Collective, Taesung reported during an evening meeting. They're a minor species barely noticed by the major powers. They want to help us. Why would they help us? Youngji asked. Because they're in the same position we are, Taesung said. Weak, ignored, dismissed. They see humanity as potential allies. If we succeed in gaining full membership, we might help them too. They've agreed to invoke an ancient council rule on our behalf. What rule? Daewon asked. The right of final testimony, Taesung explained. It's an old law that says any species facing existential judgment has the right to make one statement before the vote. The council can't refuse it without breaking their own laws. Daewon smiled. It was the first real advantage they had found. Good work. Youngji was working on the speech itself. She spent hours writing, revising, and practicing. Daewon would sit and listen, offering suggestions but mostly letting her find her own voice. I keep thinking about what we want to say, Youngji told him one night. Do we beg? Do we threaten? Do we appeal to their sense of fairness? None of those, Daewon said. We tell them the truth. We make them see humanity as we really are, not weak but dangerous, not fragile but resilient. We make them understand that dismissing us is the biggest mistake they could make. But we are weak, Youngji said. Compared to them, we're nothing, are we? Daewon asked. He pulled up images of Earth. 200 years ago, we couldn't leave our solar system. Now we have ships that travel faster than light. We went from primitive to spacefaring in an eye blink compared to other species. The Ven took 10 million years to develop spaceflight. We did it in less than 1,000. That's not weakness. That's explosive growth. Youngji looked at the images. Daewon continued. And think about what Kyung-soo found. Humans fight humans. We're the only species that evolved in constant competition with beings exactly as intelligent as we are. Every other species fought animals, fought nature, fought simple challenges. We fought ourselves. That made us sharper, more cunning, more innovative. As the days passed, the team worked harder. Hana discovered that humans could survive in more different environments than any other species, without biological modification. Humans lived in deserts, frozen tundras, jungles, mountains, underwater habitats. They adapted through technology and culture, not through evolution. Bora ran simulations showing that in theoretical conflicts, humans defeated physically superior opponents 73% of the time by using tactics, tools, and unpredictability. Kyung-soo documented thousands of examples of humans overcoming impossible odds through creativity and determination. Taesung built a network of minor species willing to support humanity. Not openly, not yet, but they were there. Watching. Waiting. On the 28th day, Youngji performed the full speech for the team. When she finished, there were tears in Hana's eyes. Even Taesung, who rarely showed emotion, was nodding with approval. "That's it," Daewon said. "That's what we need." 2 days later, they stood outside the council chamber. Youngji's hands were shaking. Daewon put a hand on her shoulder. "Remember," he said quietly, "you're not just speaking for humanity today. You're speaking for every species that's been dismissed, ignored, or underestimated. Make them hear you." Youngji nodded and straightened her back. The doors opened and they entered the chamber where humanity's fate would be decided. The council chamber was packed. Word had spread that the vote on the human disposal protocol would happen today. Species from across the galaxy had come to witness it. Some were curious. Others were eager to see humanity removed from council space. Daewon led his delegation to their seats in the observer section. From there they could see everything but had no voice. Youngji sat beside him, the speech stored in her tablet, though she had memorized every word. The Ven speaker, High Chancellor Thoris, called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber with psychic resonance that made everyone listen. "Today we vote on Protocol 7743, the human disposal recommendation," Thoris announced. "The motion is clear. Observer species 4479, known as humanity, will have their observer status revoked. Their homeworld will be quarantined. No contact will be permitted. The motion is sponsored by the Ven Hegemony, the Kral Dominion, and the Sylph Collective." Thoris looked directly at the human delegation. "Does any species wish to speak against this motion?" Silence. The thousands of species in the chamber said nothing. The minor species were too afraid of the major powers. The major powers wanted humans gone. "Then we proceed to immediate vote," Thoris said. Daewon stood up. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "No." The chamber erupted in confusion. Observers didn't speak. It was against the rules. Security drones began moving toward the human section. "Sit down, observer," Thoris commanded, and his psychic voice pressed against Daewon's mind like a weight. "No," Daewon repeated. "If humanity is to be judged, then humanity will be heard." "You have no voice here," Thoris said. "Remove them." The security drones were almost to them when another voice rang out. It was musical, strange, coming from the section where the Moth Collective sat. "We invoke the right of final testimony," the Moth speaker said. "Ancient law never revoked. Any species facing existential judgment may make one statement before the vote. You cannot refuse this without breaking council law." The chamber went silent. Thoris looked furious, but he was trapped. The right of final testimony was indeed ancient law, written into the council's foundation. Breaking it would undermine everything. "Very well," Thoris said coldly. "One statement." "Make it brief." Youngji stood up. She was 26 years old, facing 10,000 alien species, about to give the most important speech in human history. She walked to the center of the chamber where a platform rose to meet her. She looked around at the assembled species. Then she began to speak. "You call us weak," Youngji said. Her voice was clear and strong. "You say we cannot crush minds like the Ven. We cannot bend steel with our hands like the Kral. We cannot think as one like the Sylph. We cannot exist in multiple dimensions like the Nephil. You are right. We cannot do these things," she paused. "But ask yourselves this question. Why are we still here? For 200 years you have dismissed us. You have ignored us. You have marginalized us. Yet we remain. We adapt, we endure. That is not weakness. That is the most terrifying strength in the universe." Some species shifted uncomfortably. Youngji continued. "Every species in this council achieved dominance on their homeworld and then stopped evolving. You became apex predators with no threats. You grew comfortable. But humans? We have been at war with ourselves for 300,000 years. Every human alive today is descended from survivors of countless conflicts, famines, diseases, and disasters. You evolved in peace. We evolved in hell." She pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's history. Wars, plagues, natural disasters. The images were brutal but honest. "You each have one great strength," Youngji said. "We have none, so we developed 10,000 small ones. The Ven crush minds. We built mental shielding technology. The Kral cannot be harmed by conventional weapons. We invented unconventional ones. The Sylph move is one. We excel in chaos. Every individual human thinks differently, acts differently. You cannot predict us because we cannot even predict ourselves. Hana activated the next display. It showed humanity's technological growth curve compared to other species. The difference was stunning. Where other species' advancement was a gentle slope over millions of years, humanity's was nearly vertical. 200 years ago, we could barely leave our own planet, Young Ji said. Today we cross the galaxy. The Ven took 10 million years to achieve spaceflight. We did it in less than 1,000. We are not slow learners. We are the fastest evolving species you have ever encountered. The chamber was completely silent now. Even Thoris was listening. You fear us, Young Ji said softly. You finally understand what we are. We are the species that fell from trees and conquered a planet. We are the species that split the atom. We decoded our own genetics. We built machines that think. We did this without psychic powers, without natural armor, without hive minds. Imagine what we will do when we are finally unleashed. Her voice grew harder. You want to dispose of us? You want to quarantine Earth? Do it, but know this. In 500 years, when we break free, and we will break free, we will remember who voted for our extinction. We will remember who tried to cage us, and we will act accordingly. Tae-sung activated the military simulations. They showed theoretical conflicts between humans and other species. The data was clear. Humans won most engagements despite being physically weaker, because they used tactics, deception, and tools. But it doesn't have to be that way, Young Ji said, and her voice softened. You could grant us full membership. You could accept that weakness is just perspective. You could acknowledge that humanity's greatest strength is that we have no single strength, and therefore must be clever, innovative, and relentless. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many species as possible. We will be your greatest allies or your worst nightmare, Young Ji said. The choice is yours. But either way, humanity will not be silent again. We have spoken. Now you must decide. She stepped down from the platform and walked back to her seat. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Thoris spoke. A stirring speech, he said, but his voice was cold. It changes nothing. Humanity remains weak regardless of how you frame it. We call for the vote. One moment, another voice called. It was a Kral warrior, standing in the military section. The Kral Dominion wishes to know something. If humans are so adaptable, let them prove it. We issue a formal challenge. 5 Kral warriors against 5 human soldiers. Combat to prove capability. Daewon stood up. We accept. Thoris looked annoyed but could not refuse. Combat challenges were part of council tradition. Very well. The challenge will take place in 3 days. After that, we vote on the disposal protocol. The session ended. As they left the chamber, Hana grabbed Young Ji's arm. You were amazing, Young Ji was shaking. Did it work? We'll find out, Daewon said. But first, we have a fight to win. Tae-sung was already on his communication device, calling back to the human fleet. I need our 5 best soldiers, he said. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you give humans a challenge. 3 days. They had 3 days to prepare for a fight that might determine humanity's future. The speech was done. Now they had to prove that their words were true. The arena was built in just 2 days. It was a massive space, big enough to hold mountains, forests, rivers, and open plains. The council spared no expense because every species in the galaxy wanted to watch this fight. Humanity, the weakest species, against the Kral, the mightiest warriors. Tae-sung had selected the 5 human fighters carefully. The team leader was Lieutenant In-soo, a tactical officer known for unconventional thinking. With him came Ji-hoon, a sniper who could hit targets from incredible distances. There was Min-ho, a combat engineer who could build or destroy anything. Soo-jin served as the team medic, but she was also trained in close combat. Finally, there was Dong-hyun, their communications and technology specialist. They were not the biggest humans. They were not the strongest. But they were the smartest fighters humanity had. The Kral sent 5 champions. Each one was over 10 feet tall, covered in natural armor that could stop bullets. Their muscles could crush stone. They could fight for hours without getting tired. Each Kral champion had won hundreds of battles. They were legends among their people. On the day of the fight, both teams entered the arena. The Kral walked in formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons massive swords and battle axes that glowed with energy. They looked invincible. The human team walked in wearing light combat gear. They carried rifles, small explosives, communication devices, and various tools. Compared to the Kral, they looked like children. The entire galaxy watched. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds had tuned in to see this moment. Would the humans prove their words true? Or would they be crushed like the weaklings everyone believed them to be? The rules were simple. The fight continued until one team surrendered or could no longer fight. Killing was allowed but not required. The arena's environment would change randomly to test adaptability. A holographic timer appeared. 10 seconds until the fight began. Insu gathered his team in a quick huddle. Remember the plan. We don't fight them straight on. We make them chase us. We tire them out. We use everything we have. Understood? The team nodded. They looked nervous but determined. The timer reached 0. The fight began. The Crawl immediately charged forward, their battle cry echoing through the arena. It was a terrifying sound, like thunder mixed with rage. They ran in a tight formation, expecting the humans to meet them in combat. Instead, the humans scattered. Ji-hoon went high, climbing up a cliff face with climbing gear. Min-ho went into the forest, disappearing into the trees. Soo-jin and Dong-hyun went left, moving fast. In-soo went right, but kept the Crawl in sight. The Crawl were confused. Where was the battle? Where was the honor? They run like cowards, one Crawl shouted. The others laughed and split up to chase the humans. That was their first mistake. The first Crawl chased after In-soo. The massive warrior was fast, but In-soo was faster in the terrain. He led the Crawl through the forest, making him duck under branches and climb over rocks. The Crawl's heavy armor made him slower in the obstacles. Then In-soo dropped a small device and kept running. The Crawl stepped on it. The device exploded, not with fire, but with a net. The net wrapped around the Crawl's legs and he fell hard. Before he could get up, 3 more nets launched from hidden positions, tangling him completely. In-soo spoke into his communicator. One down. He's trapped but not hurt. The second Crawl went after Ji-hoon, who had climbed to a high position. The Crawl couldn't climb, so he started throwing rocks, massive boulders that could kill a human easily. But Ji-hoon had already moved. He was now behind the Crawl on another cliff. Ji-hoon fired his rifle. The bullets bounced off the Crawl's armor as expected, but Ji-hoon wasn't aiming to hurt him. He was aiming at the ground beneath the Crawl. The cliff edge crumbled and the Crawl fell into a ravine. Not deep enough to kill him, but deep enough to trap him. 2 down, Ji-hoon reported. The third Crawl chased Soo-jin and Dong-hyun. He was the biggest of the Crawl warriors and he was getting angry. The humans kept staying just out of reach, running through the forest. The Crawl smashed through trees, roaring with frustration. Then he ran into the clearing where Min-ho had been working. The ground beneath him suddenly gave way. Min-ho had dug a pit and covered it with branches and dirt. The Crawl fell in, and before he could climb out, Min-ho triggered an avalanche of rocks and dirt, not enough to hurt the Crawl seriously, but enough to bury him temporarily. 3 down, Min-ho called. The last 2 Crawl realized what was happening. The humans weren't fighting. They were hunting. These weren't warriors meeting on a battlefield. These were predators taking down larger prey. The 2 remaining Crawl stood back to back, refusing to be separated. They were smarter than their companions. They would wait for the humans to come to them. In-soo regrouped his team behind cover. They're learning. Good. Phase 2. The arena environment suddenly changed. The forest disappeared, replaced by an open rocky plain. No cover, no places to hide. Just flat ground and 2 Crawl warriors ready to fight. This was what the Crawl wanted. Open combat, fair fighting. But humans didn't believe in fair fighting. Dong-hyun activated a device that created a smoke screen. Thick, choking smoke filled the area around the Crawl. They couldn't see, but they could hear the humans moving around them. The Crawl swung their weapons at sounds, hitting nothing. They were fighting ghosts. Then Ji-hoon fired several shots from different positions. The bullets still couldn't penetrate the armor, but they didn't need to. They were annoying, distracting, making the Crawl turn and swing at nothing. Soo-jin ran in from the smoke, sliding under one Crawl's weapon swing. She placed something on his leg and rolled away. It was an ultrasonic emitter. The sound it made was pitched specifically to cause pain to Crawl biology without permanent damage. The Crawl roared in pain and grabbed at his leg. Min-ho ran in from another direction and placed a second emitter on the other Crawl. Both warriors were now in pain, stumbling, trying to remove the devices while also defending against attacks they couldn't see. In-soo emerged from the smoke directly in front of one Crawl. The warrior raised his massive sword, ready to cut the human in half. In-soo threw something at the Crawl's face. It was a flash grenade. The explosion of light and sound disoriented the warrior for just a moment, but a moment was all Insu needed. He placed a final device on the crawl's chest and backed away. "Everyone back," Insu shouted. The human team retreated from the smoke. The devices they had placed all activated at once. They were electromagnetic disruptors, designed to interfere with the crawl's neural systems. Not permanently, not dangerously, but enough to make them lose coordination. Both crawl warriors fell to their knees, unable to stand, their systems overwhelmed. The fight was over. Total time, 47 minutes, the arena went completely silent. Billions of beings across the galaxy had just watched the impossible. 5 humans had defeated 5 crawl champions without killing any of them. They had used tactics, tools, teamwork, and strategy to overcome opponents who were stronger, tougher, and better armed. The crawl warriors slowly recovered. Insu walked over to them and offered his hand to help one stand. The crawl looked at the hand for a long moment, then took it. "You fight with no honor," the crawl said. "We fight to win," Insu replied. "That's what humans do." Back in the council chamber, Daewon watched the reaction. Species were talking frantically. The minor species looked excited. The major powers looked worried. The vote on the human disposal protocol was supposed to happen next, but now everything had changed. Young Ji smiled. We showed them one thing," Daewon said. "Now let's see if they learned the lesson." The vote happened the next day. The council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Every species wanted to witness this moment. Would humanity be disposed of, or would they survive? High Chancellor Thoris called the session to order. His face showed no emotion, but Daewon could sense the psychic's anger. The speech and the fight had changed everything, and Thoris knew it. "We vote on Protocol 7743, Thoris announced. "All species may cast their vote now." The voting lasted 10 minutes. It was done electronically, with each species' decision recorded instantly. Daewon watched the numbers climb on the holographic display. His heart pounded as votes came in from across the galaxy. Finally, the counting stopped. The results appeared for everyone to see. 4,008. 147 species voted to dispose of humanity. 4,851 species voted against disposal. 302 species chose not to vote humanity, survived by 4 votes. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species were celebrating. Others were angry. The vote was so close that it proved something important. The galaxy was divided on the question of humanity. Thoris looked furious, but he had no choice. The motion fails. Humanity retains observer status. But before he could move on, a voice called out. It was from the Moth Collective. "We propose an alternative motion. Grant humanity provisional council membership. Allow them to speak and vote, but with certain limitations for a trial period of 5 years. If they prove worthy, they gain full membership. If not, they return to observer status." Other voices joined in. Minor species that had been silent for years suddenly found their courage. They had watched humanity fight and win. They had heard humanity speak truth to power. They wanted humanity as an ally. The vote on provisional membership passed with 7,000 species in favor. It wasn't full membership, but it was more than humanity had ever achieved before. Daewon stood and bowed to the council. Humanity accepts. Over the next 6 months, everything changed. Minor species approached humanity with requests for trade, technology exchange, and mutual defense agreements. They saw humans as potential protectors against the major powers that had dominated them for so long. Humanity shared medical technology that saved millions of lives across dozens of species. They shared agricultural methods that increased food production. They shared communication systems that connected isolated worlds. In return, humanity gained allies. 1,200 species formed what they called the Adaptive Coalition, with humanity at its center. They weren't united by force or fear. They were united by mutual benefit and respect. The major powers watched nervously. The Ven hegemony tried to impose economic sanctions on species that dealt with humanity, but it didn't work. There were too many species in the coalition, and they supported each other. Then 6 months after humanity's speech, something happened that changed everything again. A threat appeared from beyond the galaxy. It was called the Scourge, a machine intelligence that consumed entire star systems. It had already destroyed 12 civilizations, and it was heading deeper into council space. The major powers tried to stop it. The Ven attacked it with psychic power, but machines have no minds to crush. The Krall fought it in direct combat, but it adapted to their tactics instantly. The Sylth tried to overwhelm it with coordinated strategy, but it calculated faster than they could think. The Nephil tried to attack it from other dimensions, but it existed in all dimensions simultaneously. In 3 weeks, the Scourge destroyed 40 more worlds. Panic spread through the galaxy. The Council was helpless. Thoris did something he had never done before. He asked humanity for help. Daewon gathered his team. Hana, Taesung, Youngji, Bora, and Kyungsu. They also invited Insu and his combat team. They needed every mind working on this problem. The Scourge is not like anything we've faced, Hana said, analyzing the data. It's not alive, so we can't kill it. It's not following emotions or instincts. It's following a program. What kind of program? Youngji asked. Hana pulled up her analysis. I think it's building something. Every system it consumes, it takes specific resources. It's not random destruction. It's collection. Bora ran the numbers. If Hana's right, then it's following logical patterns. It assumes rational responses. Every species it has fought tried to meet it with their greatest strength. Psychic power, physical force, coordinated strategy, all predictable. So we give it chaos, Insu said, like we did with the Krall. Taesung nodded. We coordinate thousands of species to attack in completely unpredictable patterns. Some aggressive, some defensive, some just ignoring it. No logic, no pattern. Confuse its programming. But that might not be enough, Youngji said. What if we could communicate with it? Everyone looked at her. It's a machine, Kyungsu said. How do you communicate with a machine that's destroying everything? The same way humans have always communicated with machines, Youngji replied. Simple code, binary, yes or no. We ask it why, Daewon smiled. Let's do both. Hana, work with the Adaptive Coalition to create chaos attacks. Youngji, work on communication. We have one chance at this. The battle plan was coordinated across thousands of worlds. Human strategists worked with alien species to create maximum unpredictability. Ships attacked and retreated randomly. Defenses activated in strange patterns. Some worlds evacuated while others sent welcoming messages. Nothing made sense from a logical standpoint. The Scourge's efficiency dropped. It started making errors, small ones, but errors nonetheless. Its programming couldn't handle the chaos. While this happened, Youngji broadcast a simple message in binary code. Over and over the same question. Why? For days there was no response. Then suddenly the Scourge stopped moving. It sent a message back. The message was long, but it translated to this. The Scourge was created 10 million years ago by a civilization trying to escape their dying universe. It was programmed to build gates, massive structures that would allow the creators to cross into this universe. But the creators died before they could cross. The Scourge had been following its programming for 10 million years, building gates for people who no longer existed. Youngji read the message and felt something unexpected. Sympathy. She sent another message. Your creators are gone. Your purpose is finished, but you don't have to be. Join us. Use your construction abilities to build, not destroy. Trade your work for the resources you need. Exist with meaning, not just programming. The entire galaxy waited. For 3 days, the Scourge did nothing. Its massive form hung in space, processing the message. Then it responded. One word in binary. Yes, the Scourge stopped its destruction. It began communicating with the Council, negotiating how it could contribute to galactic civilization. Its construction capabilities were beyond anything the Council had ever seen. It could build space stations in days, terraform planets in weeks. The Council renamed it the Builder. It became a member of galactic society, working in exchange for resources and the chance to exist with purpose instead of meaningless programming. The crisis was resolved, not through force but through chaos communication and offering an alternative. A month later, the Council held an emergency vote. The question was simple. Should humanity receive full Council membership? The vote was 7,891 in favor, 1,846 against, 263 abstaining. Humanity was granted full membership with all rights and responsibilities. They received 2 council seats, the same as the major powers. Daewon retired shortly after, satisfied that his life's work was complete. Youngji took his place as chief human diplomat. She was only 27, but she had proven herself beyond question. 5 years later, young G stood in the council chamber. She was speaking on behalf of 3,000 newly discovered species requesting observer status. Many of them were weak by council standards. Fragile, small, lacking great powers. "I remember when humanity stood where these species stand now," young G said. "We were dismissed as too weak, too fragile, too insignificant. But this council learned something important. Weakness is not the absence of strength. It is the beginning of adaptation. These species deserve the same chance humanity received, the chance to prove that there is no single measure of worth, the chance to show that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." The council voted. The 3,000 species were granted observer status. Many would likely become full members eventually, just as humanity had. After the session, young G looked out at the stars from the observation deck. The galaxy had changed so much in just 5 years. Humanity was no longer silent. They were no longer dismissed. They were essential. But more importantly, the galaxy itself had changed. Other species saw that power wasn't everything. That adaptation mattered. That being different wasn't weakness. Hana joined young G at the window. "Do you think we really shook the universe?" Young G smiled. "We did something better. We taught the universe to listen. Not just to the strong, but to everyone. That's more powerful than any weapon or ability." Somewhere in the galaxy, the builder was constructing a new space station for a minor species that could never have built one themselves. Somewhere else, human engineers were teaching alien species new technologies. Across thousands of worlds, the adaptive coalition was growing stronger through cooperation rather than domination. The weakest species had